Hi, my name is Claire, and I am an intern here at the Tick app, an app that aims to see where, when, and how people are exposed to ticks. I spent a day with our researchers in the UW-Madison Arboretum, a space filled with lush plant life, singing birds, and of course, ticks. Join me on an eventful day here on the Tick Talk.
I think we should start with you introducing yourself.
So I'm Ashanti. I'm a fellow with the fellowship this year with the Midwest Center of Excellence for Vector-Borne Diseases. So we're studying ticks. So we'll do a bunch of tick dragging, live tick collecting, just to find what exactly different hikers or people who would come in the woods, how many ticks they may come across, and then eventually towards the end of the year we'll test the ticks to see which ones are carrying parasites that may be able to transmit different diseases to humans or animals.
Yeah, so I'm Lyric Bartholomew. I'm a professor in the School of Veterinary Medicine at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and one of the directors of the Midwest Center of Excellence for Vector-Borne Disease. I am a mosquito and tick researcher, and this morning we're out in the University of Wisconsin Arboretum looking for ticks to see what might be here and to show you the lay of the land so you can see where ticks might be.
Hi, I'm Susan Paskowitz. I'm a professor in the Department of Entomology and one of the directors of the Midwest Center of Excellence for Vector-Borne Disease. And we're out here this morning to do some representative tick sampling using a piece of equipment called a tick drag. It looks a little bit like a big square of white fabric, and our particular drag has these little tails on the end that are weighted down. We can use that drag to pull across the vegetation for a certain distance, and then we can do that all across the state in lots of parks, in people's backyards, lots of different places, and get really good comparative data, which will allow us to say where are the ticks the worst in a given time or space.
Shake off the drag so anything we picked up last time is freed. I'm going to start right here, pretty close to the road, to the trail. I'll drop the drag down to the ground and just kind of slow and steady pull it across. I got some things in the way. So as I said, if we were doing this for a study, we would come out with a measuring tape and get a nice measured distance. Now we've pulled up the drag, and I have a nymph over here, I believe.
Yep.
So you can see just how tiny they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's about the size of like you said before, a poppy seed.
Mm-hmm. And they kind of move along like a little crab.
Mm-hmm. Is this a size that can carry?
That's right. I mean, so actually, this teenager stage that we're seeing here, the nymph, and the adult, can transmit Lyme to people.
It's not moving. I thought it was dead.
The other life stage, the larva, is really small, and that one tends to want to feed on mice or other rodents that are close to the ground.
The first year, 2015, was the worst, and the densities were probably in that 1 to every 200 to 300 meters, which is nothing like what we see in some of our worst spots. Right. There, like in the worst year ever, I think we were getting almost a tick every meter. It was like remarkable.
Yeah.
But we don't see that very often. Yeah, that's not here in the Arboretum at all.
Why do you think that is?
It could be something about the density of deer and how they move through this environment and how they're managed within this environment. So those populations are kept pretty low. And if you don't have deer, you really have to have something that will feed the adults and move them around so that you get these ticks dropping off in different spaces, right, and invading those spaces. But So that's my best guess, that it has something to do with the deer. The other thing in this Lost City forest is, I didn't realize this until a couple years into the study, it is really wet here after the snow melts in the spring. And there's standing water, and you try to walk through here and your boots get all muddy. And we know from work we've done in the laboratory that if you put larvae in ice cold water, they don't survive very well. So I think that could also be suppressing populations here in a way that we don't see in more upland sites.
Sure.
One of the things that we have to do with our fellows is to make sure that they're well protected when they're out here doing this work, like Ashani was describing, because of course we're often in places where the ticks are just intense. And here I'm speaking about the deer tick or the black-legged tick, the tick that transmits Lyme disease. So some of the places where we work, the densities are really high. That's why we go there. And we want to make sure that the students and fellows working with us are well protected. So I'll describe what I'm wearing, and it's really the same thing that Lyric today and Ashanti are also wearing. We've got light colored pants on. We have our pants tucked into our socks, and we're all wearing rubber knee boots. Some of us are more colorful than others. Lyric's are polka dot. And then our shirts are either long sleeve. Lyric is wearing a long sleeve white shirt. And then Ashanti and I have short-sleeved white t-shirts. And the reason we do that is because really easy to see the ticks on those background, just like it's easy to see the ticks on the background of our blanket drag. One other thing that we do that we think really helps is we have our fellows spray their clothing with an insecticide called permethrin. And as long as the clothes are dry after you've done that, that provides a really good barrier, because the ticks will crawl up and get a little dose of that and then die before they can transmit any disease.
So can you explain a little bit more why dragging is really important for research?
Yeah, so for any kind of research on an arthropod, a small mammal, whatever, it's really important that you understand something about how abundant your subject is in an area, right? Mm-hmm. So for surveillance, for example, for the state of Wisconsin, trying to understand in different places, in different state parks, is the risk high, low? And then, as a result of doing those kind of comparisons, try to understand what it might be that's leading to low populations of ticks. Also to high, if we can interfere with high, that's good too, but maybe there's something that we haven't recognized that's helping to try to limit those populations, and that could be something like a pathogen in the environment. You know, ticks tend to be very susceptible to fungus when you bring them back into the laboratory. It's a very strange thing, but you think that you've got them in perfect conditions for humidity and temperature, and nothing's going to eat them. You know, they should thrive. But oftentimes, instead, what we see is a tick just sitting on the lab bench in a little vial will get fungus all over it, and then it will die. So there aren't too many other ways you can actually measure how abundant the ticks are. One way that we've done, we've tried a couple of things, and one way is to look at those animals that are important. Mm-hmm. So as an example, when deer ticks were first identified in Wisconsin, one of the very useful tools was to go out on the first day of the hunting season. So a lot of hunters out there shooting deer, which is an important host for the adult stages. They would bring them into a registration station, and we could collect all the ticks that were on like the head, shoulder areas and get a great snapshot. You know, how many ticks in a given place are actually infested with this tick. And we could see in those early studies, like in the eastern part of the state, like 0, you know, very, very, very few deer. But when you got over into the west, a pretty high proportion, you know, right. 50% to 75%. And then with the years, we were able to track and watch how that changed. You know, eventually, all the deer in all places, you know, not quite that bad, but yes, every part of the state now has an established population of these ticks, and we do get deer that are positive. Mm-hmm. You know, so that's a pretty big scale. You could also, though, come into a place like this where you don't know if there's any ticks. And if it's a low population, tick dragging doesn't give you a definitive no answer. You might get nothing after you've done pretty extensive 1,000 meters of dragging and still not get anything. Mm-hmm. So then, you know, you can do the small mammal work. You trap them, live trap them, examine all the little mice and chipmunks and trees and see if there are any ticks attached to them. And that can give you a better sense of whether a given area actually has a low, maybe emerging new population of the ticks.
You've been listening to The Tick Talk, a Tick App podcast. You can download the Tick app on the App Store or Google Play today.